Hey, the mechanics episode is going to be split into 2 total episodes, so just stick around. We'll have more about this one right around the corner, as well as this current video. Make sure you love it.
This is Party PD, and welcome back, because it's been a little while, to another episode of Dota Academy. The only reason why, well, there's a couple of other reasons, but there's the primary reason why this episode took a while to come out. Since this is the episode about mechanics, as you could probably see in the title where it says, hopefully, Dota 2 Academy, episode, 4. Probably won't do episodes anymore. I'll probably just have it say, Dota 2 Academy, and then mechanics. But anyway, yeah, this is the 4th iteration for the Academy, and we're going to talk about mechanics. Now, that's the main reason why this episode took a little while for me to figure out how and what way I can even talk about it, because Dota 2, a lot of people hear about it. It is literally the main thing that is all of Dota 2. Mechanics is basically 100% of what Dota is. In fact, there's a page that I'm going to put in the description of this video that takes you to the Dota 2 page for all the mechanics. And of course, in this one, though, we're going to try to keep it somewhat brief, but still, big enough that we could talk about all the mechanics of Dota 2. So, even for people who are just fresh to MOBAs, obviously the main mechanic is that everything has spells. Units have abilities, which is basically any ability that is used from a hero is considered a mechanic, in a sense. So, each spell has a different mechanic that works in a different way in comparison to any other various other kinds of heroes in the game. So that's why it's extremely hard to talk about mechanics, because
it changes nothing.
Because mechanics isn't just made specifically for one hero. It's not just you play the game, the mechanics are good to go. No, it's every hero has their own specific sort of mechanic that makes them strong in that way. So with that being that case, that's basically the skills and abilities. The cooldowns is one of the biggest mechanics, obviously, in Dota, where most spells have cooldowns. Some can be activated, much like Mars's shield, which can be activated to basically make it to where 70% of all attack projectiles are aimed at him when he has his shield active. But for other people, they have it to where theirs are just passives, like Medusa with split shot. So as soon as it's spec'd, you get 3 extra targets that get hit by your extra arrows that have 30, 40, 65, or 75 split point damage in comparison to your primary shot. So that's the big thing about abilities and cooldowns and all that stuff when it comes to ability mechanics. Attributes is another mechanic in the sense that we have the strength heroes, the agility heroes, and the intelligence heroes. We kind of went over this in the heroes one. But the next big thing, which was not super recently added to Dota, but recent enough that it's still really interesting to talk about, is that we have talent trees now. Now, talent trees is an interesting mechanic where basically at specific points in time in the game when you hit that level, for example, you hit level 10 with a Baden, you have the ability to pick up 10 strength or 20 movement speed. This mechanic was a fresh kind of thing that was recently added, but it's still a very important thing in a lot of Dota 2 games, because there's some heroes where their talents are pretty much one of their big defining things about the hero. For example, we have Terrorblade, whose ultimate is naturally 40 seconds cooldown at level 18. Once he hits level 25, it's minus 35 seconds of that cooldown, making one of his best abilities have a 5-second cooldown. So overall, it's pretty important to look at the talents and say that it's a very important thing in the Dota 2 mechanic world. Experience is also another mechanic, but it's pretty obvious what happens with that one, as well as spawning, health, and mana. Very straightforward things. The big thing that we do want to talk about is armor and what armor actually does. So, I mean, armor is kind of self-explanatory, all right? Armor gives you agility, or not agility. Agility gives you armor. But basically, a big thing about armor... Hang on, let's go to... I believe it'd probably be in stats. If we go to... Or it's not. Where is it? It's in about. Alright, so if we go to armor, basically, the big thing about armor is that it determines how much your physical damage is reduced by it when you get right-clicked. But that's the big thing, is that there's also damage block now as well. Damage block comes from strength heroes, which is their primary deal that comes from that whole thing. That's why you see a lot of strength heroes being picked up as the off-lane heroes. It's a very fixed amount every time it's usually blocked as well, so it's not like you can't block it a million times and so on and so forth from that. So you can see how much damage you block once you get hit by it and you see it on the top of your head. With the armor, that is. The magic resistance is another very specific thing. Magic resistance actually gets buffed by how much strength you have, as well as any items that you pick up, and then your natural magic resistance. Every hero has natural magic resistance and natural armor due to the fact that you have natural strength and natural agility that comes onto your hero. Magic resistance makes it to where it determines how much damage you deflect, and it's not deflect because deflect means you're sending it back to other people. No, in magic resistance, it just means how much you're not taking. Deflect is also just another way of putting it to where, like, yeah, you don't take how much that percentage. But deflect for some people might click in a different definition in people's heads in comparison to just how much you resist. There's also an item in the game called the Black King Bar that allows you to have 100% resistance for that period of time, which isn't entirely true anymore, but it protects you from very specific things still. The next thing I do want to talk about is an item that's in Dota 2 that is basically gives you True Strike, or anything that gives you accuracy, which is, I believe we can go to the Learn tab and then go to Items, go to the Monkey King Bar. So the big thing I want to talk about is now evasion. So the evasion is a huge deal in a lot of Dota 2 games because evasion is what could possibly keep your hero alive. There are items in Dota 2 that can give you evasion, as well as heroes in Dota 2 that have evasion naturally slotted into them. But if we look at Heaven's Halberd here, you can get 25% evasion because you slotted into the Talisman of Evasion, which we can see in the Secret Shop that has a natural 15% evasion. So most of the time when you combo items, you do end up getting more evasion because, you know, you're comboing items into some bigger piece. That turns out to just be the strongest thing you can go for. Talisman Evasion only goes into 2 various items, which both will give you the evasion that you might need. There might be neutral items as well that you'll find later into the game that can give you evasion, but I don't think I've actually seen any myself because I have yet to get to a tier 5 game to experience any crazy things that might give you that evasion, but I don't think there is any that's floating around here. Yeah, and then, of course, there's the Minotaur Horn's technically not evasion either, but there's also a way to just kind of disjoint things, but yeah, it looks like there's no evasion items that I could look up and think of at the top of my head that's available in the neutral item slots, but evasion basically makes it to where you have a percentage chance to completely avoid a physical attack. This does not mean any magical attacks have a chance to miss. It means any right clicks have a chance to miss. That's pretty important when you look at it because True Strike is that way of technically hitting it. And True Strike is either you have some talents that do it, or for this one, it says a 75% chance to pierce through evasion. So pierce is also the way of saying you have a 75% chance to hit them with 100% accuracy, with 100 bonus magical damage. Because there's also some items in the game that give you accuracy. I don't know exactly which ones they are because I have yet to actually like pay attention to what some of the accuracy things are in this game. There might be some items in the neutral items that might show you what accuracy is. There's also some, I believe some heroes have some accuracy talents you could pick. But the next big thing we want to talk about in Dota 2 is move speed. Move speed is vitally important in any way and every way, shape, and form in the Dota 2 universe. Move speed literally keeps your game moving. The quicker you move, the easier it is for you to respond to a team fight or escape from one. So no matter what, in every game, you always end up buying your boots of speed or your boots of travel, which give you a 30% something move speed to 15% at its lowest. I believe tranquil boots actually give 10 if it's disabled. Reduced to 18%. Never mind. So it is still, brown boots is the slowest technical way, but move speed keeps your game moving in all possible and normal, intelligent ways to talk about it in the sense. The biggest thing, the other thing about move speed is that turn rate. Now, turn rate's not really something you could change unless you get items that increase your turn rate. There's not too many items out there, but I remember that the Spider Legs, which is a brand new tier 3 item, well, I say brand new, but it'll give you 30% increased turn rate, and also allows you to walk through trees, which causes them to be destroyed because you're a spider walking through trees. That's just, I guess, how that works. Turn rate's a pretty good thing because some heroes have an abysmal turn rate. Their heroes are gigantic, and sometimes it takes them a very long time for them to make a full rotation around. So a hero that I can easily talk about, their poor turn rate is 100% Jakiro, because Jakiro is a giant two-headed dragon that his body is so damn huge that his turn rate is absolutely abysmal. Unfortunately, I don't think you can see it here. Actually, yeah, you can. 0.5 is his turn rate when it comes to his overall mobility. And then there's one hero that in the game has no turn rate because it has no body. It says it has a 0.7 turn rate, but at the same time, Io has no turn rate because it is a ball. But in this scenario, it's a cube because I have the item that turns him into a cube, which is what we'll talk about in a future episode for cosmetics. It'll be a very fun episode, and I believe I'm actually just going to be filming that one today as well after this. But that's basically the big thing about movement speed and turn rate. The next thing is collision size, or as everybody in Dota 2 likes to call it, pathing was fixed. And by this, I mean collision size basically makes it to where there's a certain point in time and a certain way that you can't pass through another hero. Why can't you pass through another hero? Because it's just dumb that way. We don't have very smart ways for you to move through another hero or another enemy or trees. This is called pathing. Pathing fucks you no matter what. However many times you want to think pathing is fixed, it's not fixed, Valve. Anyway, pathing is definitely one of the biggest ways that most people die in the very early game. They get pathed away from the creeps because for some reason, Valve thinks you want to go this way instead of that way. There are a few items that allow you to go through heroes on activation as well as just existing in the sort of ghost plane. The first one I'd like to talk about is phase boots. As you can see here, the active allows you to get 22% increased move speed, but the big thing is that it says it lets you move through units and turn more quickly for 3 seconds. It's the same thing with the spider legs as well. This allows you to move through anyone and anything because it gives you free pathing, which is another way of saying collision is completely disabled because you have free pathing. You're moving at your own rate and speed. The Shadow Blade is another one as well, where you can walk through enemies just so long as you don't click on them, because if you click on them, then you're not invis anymore, and that's what Shadow Blade is for. The next big thing we want to talk about in the whole mechanics era is aura, actually. Auras are a pretty huge thing in a lot of games, where some of them will give you attack speed, and other ones will give you regen over time, as well as if an enemy hero falls below 20%, they get HP regen and armor. So there's a lot of items out there that give off very good auras, as well as some early items that don't give off the best kind of auras, but at the same time, it's really good. As you can see here with drums, it's a very small item, 1900 gold, but it gives nearby allies 20 total attack speed. And when active, it gives you 35 attack speed and 13 movement speed. Oh, to nearby allies, so they made it an AoE again. Last patch, it was not an AoE, or not in 27.3c, as you can see down there. Or 23c. Wow, I said 27.3c. That's pretty funny. But anyway, auras are a pretty big thing in Dota 2. There's some heroes that give off auras that are really good as well, much like Vengeful Spirit's aura, where Venge ends up giving people a percentage of their primary attribute and bonus attack range, and then also has a range to it. Vengeful Spirit is also another very special one because when Venge dies, she drops a Vengeful Spirit of herself, which actually still has the Vengeance aura available. And then when anyone dies, well, at least back then, I don't know if it does it anymore, but back then, when Vengeful Spirit died, the person was given the Vengeance aura, and it was a negative buff. But I believe that's not the case anymore, as now the Vengeance aura drops an illusion and doesn't do that anymore. There's a lot of heroes that give off some pretty nice auras as well. And last but certainly not least, when it comes to the hero-based mechanics, we have illusions. Now, illusions are a pretty big thing in Dota 2. Some heroes have abilities that work with their illusions, much like Naga Siren, who uses Riptide. Her illusions have a chance to proc this Riptide. Or another one, which would be Phantom Lancer, where his illusions benefit from any items that you have on his illusions. And, you know, Phantom Lancer just craps out a million illusions. So, very hard to find the right PL in a team fight. And illusions is another really great way to do that. There are some other heroes that use illusions somewhat minutely, like Terrorblade, who pops out 1 to 2 illusions at a total point in time, unless you have a Manta style, which gives you 2 illusions upon cast. But with TB's illusions, all of his illusions gain his metamorphosis, which makes it to where using illusions for him is pretty good. There's also illusions, like I said, that come from items. So one of the newer ones is actually going to be the, not the Arcane Cape, I believe. It's called something else. It's called the Illusionist's Cape. This creates an illusion that's under your control that increases all outgoing damage of illusions controlled by the hero by 10%. So it's pretty good for illusion heroes to end up having this item, but another one would be the Mantis style, which poops out 2 illusions that last for about 20 seconds. They don't exactly do the most amount of damage, but like I said earlier, any illusion has the ability to get the benefits of whatever items that hero has. So illusions are pretty good when it comes down to the end story of all the lines about that. Well, that was 15 minutes already, and we're not even halfway done from the best of my understanding. I have a big old list here, and boy, oh boy, this is going to be one fat episode, but I'll probably try to like put small ones into each one and make sure that it's pretty straightforward and understanding. But anyway, on to the attack mechanics. So there are there are 4 types of overall damage in Dota 2. There's physical damage, magical damage, pure damage, and HP removal. The physical damage, as we talked about earlier, can be negated by armor, and magical damage can be somewhat negated by magic resistance. Pure damage, however, is pure. It will immediately remove that HP no matter what resistance you have, unless it can't pierce BKB, in which case then you could still end up hitting him anyway, and it just won't do much. The other thing is HP removal. So if we look at Terrorblade, it doesn't actually show for him, so it might actually be a better way for me to go to Witch Doctor here, because I believe Maldic works based off of HP removal. So as we can see here, it says causes all enemies to take the amount of damage per second. Nope, that's not it. They lost since the beginning of the charge. Lost health burst damage. So the big thing is basically, I'm just going to use it with Terrorblade because Terrorblade's probably the easiest person to talk about this one. It just doesn't say that his ability is HP removal. Basically, it says the HP has a swapping point, and at which point he technically removes the HP. There's also some other ones that just have HP removal percentages as well. I don't know if Venomancer does that. I believe it's all just DPS. Yeah, it looks like it's all just DPS, so that's not, there's not too many things in there that do HP removal, but those things exist, basically. You got to keep those in mind. The next is the attack damage. So when you look at a hero, you end up seeing that you have a specific amount of attack damage. As you see here, it says 53 to 63. Your damage actually is within that period of time, and that is what is called your hero damage and your base damage, as you can see here. The other thing you want to look at is actually, oh, well, hang on, no. Your hero damage is what your basic damage is, and your basic damage is also this as well. So no, I had it right. Piercing damage basically is another thing where it's the 100% chance to proc, which is the piercing damage as you see here. It gives 75% chance to pierce, which goes back to the same thing as that piercing is accuracy. Accuracy is true strike, and true strike is pretty good. Then you have siege damage, which in reality just comes from things when you hit buildings. So as you can see here, there's this tier 4 neutral item called the Leveler that gives you 25% bonus building damage. The siege damage at the end of the game is visible at the post screen where you see how much siege damage you did. Siege damage means how much damage you did to all total structures. Pretty straightforward. The next big thing we want to talk about is spell damage. And how exactly is this good? How do you get spell damage to be better? Well, that is answered by simply saying spell amplification. There are items in Dota 2 that allow you to increase your spell amplification, as well as the fact that intelligence gives you spell amplification as its secondary buff if you are an intelligence hero. Actually, no, you get it anyway as an intelligence hero. So 8% spell amplification off of items like Kaya, or 4% or 3% that come off of things like Null Talisman, as well as some other various small items that are thrown about throughout the game, much like not Timeless Relic. No, not Spell Prism either. There is a couple items, I can't remember which neutral items they were, that actually gives you spell amplification. It might not actually be within this level of items. In fact, I don't think any of them do, now that I think about this. A lot of them are just cooldown reductions. So, yeah, going through a lot of these items here, looks like there's not any right off the get-go. There's some that make it to where it reduces magic resistance, and there's the Nether Shawl, which gives you 8% spell damage, which is the same story as spell amplification. It's just a whole different kind of overall story. Next, we have damage manipulation. So there's damage amplification, damage reduction, and damage negation. These calculations are purely affected by a value of damage instance. Items and abilities can apply, reduce, or negate the overall final damage. So for instance, there's some items that make it to where you just have no damage incoming taken. An easy way for me to really look at this one would probably be going to the Phoenix Lamp, if you could see it. There you go. Not the Phoenix Ash. Although you have the right idea. It's I don't actually know the name of it, so you're gonna have to look a little harder. Little harder. You could find it. Oh, there it is. It's the Magic Lamp. So, when it comes to the damage reduction and damage negation, there's some items that allow you to get healed at the end of basically dying, or there's another one called the Aeon Disc, which will allow you to get resistance, which is another way of saying damage negation. The Aeon Disc allows you to basically just not take damage as soon as the Aeon Disc is procced. As you can see here, it allows a 70% strong, or when your HP drops to 70%, it applies a strong dispel and gives you a 2.5 second buff that gives you 75% status resistance and causes all damage you deal and dealt to be reduced to 0. Basically, that is the damage negation as well as damage reduction. Which damage reduction, again, comes from just having armor. A damage over time, if any of you have ever played any sort of MMO, you know what a dot is. And we can go to the easiest person to talk about a dot. Basically, Venomancer, all of his abilities deal dot damage. As you can see here, it's called damage per tick. But basically, if any of you have ever played an MMO, it is called a dot. Of course, if you want to call it a DOP, then it's all you, but it is a dot. The next best thing is attack speed. Now, attack speed, believe it or not, also comes from having a high level of agility. Each point of agility grants 1 attack speed, 0.6 armor, and 5% movement speed. But basically, we're looking at the fact that agility gives you attack speed. There's also items in particular that you can get that allow you to get attack speed, much like a Glove of Haste or a Hand of Midas. Both of these will give you attack speed because they use a Glove of Haste in the end game of that recipe, as well as some various tier 5 items like not the Ballistas, the Pirate's Hat. Yeah, the Pirate's Hat will give you 250 attack speed, but that's why it's called a tier 5 item. It only shows up once you hit the game at the 70-minute mark. Long point in time. Attack speed is pretty good. There's, again, items that give you attack speed as well as items that give you agility and attack speed because of the fact that they're combined into a lot of various different items and allows you to get that sort of setup. The next most important thing is called an attack animation. Now, believe it or not, every hero has a way they attack. They have a backswing, they have an attack point, as well as anything else beyond that. So an attack point basically means that if you're alt-clicking the ground, you actually have an attack point being at that ground. If there's anything at that ground point which you clicked, your hero will attack and will do the attack animation. It's the same thing as an attack backswing if you have any sort of backswing-based attacks. The next other thing I'd like to talk about is a cast animation. Some heroes have cast animations or channeling when it comes to depending on which ults they want to use. So for an easy example, Sand King has a channel which allows him to start channeling his epicenter. Which, at that point, you can end up just continually channeling the epicenter, and then... But the second you start the channel, it is dead. You've used the ability, in those 2 seconds, you'll never get back. And you'll never get back your 140-second ultimate. There's also some other heroes that have attack animations that can be cancelled, or casting animations for certain spells that can be cancelled if you're quick enough on it. So, for example, Mars, if you're quick enough on it, you could fake chuck his spear, and then just drag it back in as soon as you possibly can, because you can just cancel the attack animation. Usually, or the cast animation, you can just hook that up to just a little quick button on your keyboards or on your mice if you have a multi-buttoned mice that will allow you to do that. Missile travel speed is another big thing that we want to look at when it comes to big abilities. So, one of the easiest ways I can put this is that Mirana has an ability called Sacred Arrow. It travels at a specific period of time, and I can't remember how long it travels for, but you could travel from, it looks like to be 5 seconds. And at the maximum point in time, it can have a maximum point of 5 seconds stun. That's not exactly a projectile, but it is more of a missile speed. The projectile speeds would be any sort of ranged hero, as well as any sort of abilities that actually have a projectile speed ratio. So much like Vengeful Spirit, she has Magic Missile. This is a Magic Missile in the sense that it has a missile speed, or a ranged item speed, or ranged item cast speed. And then, of course, as a ranged hero, you have attack range, which is just another mechanic to that. So with that being said, I mean, there's a lot more we could talk about with this. I don't know how much is left. Actually, there's There's no, there's quite a few things left here. So we're gonna actually split this into 2 episodes here. We'll go ahead and talk about attack modifiers since we're still in the attack stuff, and then we will jump into a second portion of this video where we talk about the mechanics. So, into attack modifiers, the first one you have is Critical Strike, which an easy person to jump to is Phantom Assassin when we talk about this, as her ability is called Coup de Grace, and she has a chance to critically attack and damage a hero, which has a 200 to 325 to 450% damage of your base damage. Basically, the big thing about Critical Strike is that it takes from your basic attack damages and adds it by a multiplier percentage, or a percentage multiplier. The next big thing is Cleave and Splash, which again, we can go to PA again. We can go over to the fact that she has a 15 talent that gives her 25% cleave. There's also an item called Battle Fury, which will allow you to end up having that sort of deal as well. So the Cleave and Splash is basically, when you use a basic attack, it will have a chance, or not a chance, it will spill to a close by area target that's within the Cleave range. Cleave has a very moderate range, and it's still very nice. Some heroes have abilities where their Cleave is basically their based ability, as we can go over to Kunkka, and that would be Tidebringer, where it grants him Cleave in a large area of effect in front of him. As you can see here, he has a specific Cleave range. So this would be a perfect definition of Cleave and Splash. Next would be Bash, which is, I probably would have to go to an item for this one, because the person I would go to can't actually bash anymore. So, one of the next other things is called a Bash. It grants melee heroes a 25% chance to stun a target for 1.5 seconds, dealing 100 bonus damage. If you use it on a ranged hero, it gives you 10%. So, ideally, you want to use a Skull Basher on a melee hero. But you can also put it on ranged heroes as well. There are some heroes that no longer have the ability to use or have Bash anymore. As you can see here, there are 3 heroes, Spirit Breaker, Faceless Void, and Slardar, that do not benefit from Bash. The only reason why that is because Spirit Breaker has a reliable Bash, Faceless Void has a reliable Bash, and Slardar has an indefinite reliable Bash. Some heroes that have those inline reliable bashes are not capable of having the Skull Basher because you can't stack 2 instances of Bash. Which I don't know why, don't ask me, that's just Valve doing Valve things. Next, we want to talk about lifesteal. That's a very important thing for a lot of cores out there. There are 3 methods of lifesteal, as well as any sort of talents, or if you are a Wraith King or any hero like that who has a Wraith King aura-esque kind of deal, you can get lifesteal from them. But the big thing is that there's 3, or technically 4 if you want to keep the Morbid Mask at nut. To get lifesteal, the baseline lifesteal with the Morbid Mask is 15, but you can go over to other items and see that this one will give you 20%. This one will give you 25% with a active that allows you to have 200% for 5 seconds, or a Vladimir's that makes it sets it to 25%, but everyone is able to get it, which is a very nice aura, which will go back to the aura thing, is actually probably one of the better auras to get as a support or like a offlaner core, which we'll talk about soon after into the next episode here. Next, we have Mana Break, which is actually very specific to very specific heroes. Mana Break allows people to break their mana. It breaks 50%, or not breaks 50%. Well, for Anti-Mage, it turns 50% of burn mana into damage onto the target, but for Anti-Mage, basically, is a pretty slat-out example here that allows you to see that you can burn 64 mana per hit with a max mana burn of 4% every attack. And mana burn basically just means you're removing mana from the enemy. It's pretty straightforward, but most of the time it also puts damage out on the same thing. Active and auto casts, basically. So then active would be much like, I'd probably go to Viper on this one. So a Viper active / auto cast would be his poison attack. When in game, you can right click the ability to make it to where it continually auto attacks with that being active. It's a big attack modifier that actually just helps out a lot of mid-game times overall. But with that being said, that's it for all the attack-based stuff when it comes to the first episode of the mechanics. We will jump right into the second episode of this mechanics episode right now. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to release both the mechanics episodes today. So hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you right around the corner for part 2 of the mechanics episode. This is Pt1 with Dota Academy, signing off.
Thanks for watching this episode of Dota Academy. We'll come to you next time with some more epic videos about learning Dota. If there's anything you need me to highlight, please feel free to say it in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.